Hi, welcome to episode number 50 of Susan Stanley Stitch in Time. I am Susan and I'm so pleased you're here today. It's been a while and I have some exciting things to share with you. We're going to talk about cross stitch, we're going to talk about quilting, we're going to look at my whips, some haul, and a little bit of a life update, and a little more in the story of Corliss, my fictional girl from 1870 who is stitching and learning all the things needed to live life during that time period. I've added chapters to my episodes, my Floss Tube episodes, the last 3 or 4. So if you're wanting to look at a specific section, or maybe don't have time to watch the whole video or want to go back and watch a section, that's a really easy way to access just the part you need. So I hope you'll take advantage of that, and I hope you find that helpful. Let me know what you think, if that's something you'd like me to continue to do. My son got married this last month, and it's been a whirlwind. I'm a little rusty. I feel like I'm a little bit out of practice on setting up my filming and talking, but I'm really glad to be back, and I have tried to stay connected as best I can on Instagram. It's been a really happy time, and I will share some more about that at the end. Today, like I said, I'm going to talk about my whips, my works in progress, some new starts, and some things that I need to start that I'm contemplating, and I'd love you to weigh in on that when I talk about it. I have a little bit of haul to share with you, and then of course a new chapter in Corliss and her stitching adventures. So let's get started. So what have I been working on? Well, besides all the exciting wedding prep, company, oh my goodness, clothing items needed. I mean, it's like a whirlwind, and for those of you who've experienced it, it's like this big whirlwind, and then it's over and the door slams and you're just kind of left in a bit of a stunned state, recovering and just relishing all the memories. So that's where I've mostly been. But to calm down, to kind of feel a little relaxed and centered, I have had to do some stitching, and I haven't stitched as much as I'd like to, but I did get a few stitches in on some things that I'm like really anxious to get going. So if you have been following me, you know that I started this adorable little stitch by Scattered Seed Samplers. I loved the chart when I saw it, and I love, everything about the way it's done. I don't really feel like when I looked at it I thought it needed any changes. However, I was in my sewing studio one day, and this fabric that I had on my shelf was just calling to me, and I just thought, why haven't I used this fabric? I love this fabric so much. I don't know if you're like this, but it's like a favorite fabric, and I know once I cut into it and commit to it, then I have to go in that direction because I can't waste it. And so, there's just, I don't know what that is. Is that like a fear of perfection? Is it a perfectionism thing? I guess I wanted the perfect project for it. And so I looked at it, and for some reason that chart popped into my head when I saw this. So I ran and got the chart, and I held it up next to it, and I thought, okay, maybe this would be good for the finishing, and that way I can have a taste of this fabric even though I haven't used it yet. And I had some ideas for quilts and things to use this fabric in. So I started stitching, and this is what I started with, and I got that far, and I thought, it just doesn't do the chart or the fabric justice. It just hasn't enough depth to it. So then I pulled out a bunch of Veronica threads. Now let me see if I can show this to you, and you've probably seen this if you've been following me on Instagram. And I did kind of a color swatch test for colors that would work with this fabric, and I charted them all out, and then I contemplated how I might adapt the colors on the chart, which I don't normally do, but I'm telling you what, I'm having a blast doing it. So I did post on Instagram this week my progress, and I'll show you a little bit more of my progress. So I'm intending to use that fabric for a different finish than the chart calls for, of course. Can I just follow directions? No, I'm just terrible. Anyway, this is what I have so far. And so you can see I've shaded the pears. I did a little bit of a back stitch on the outer edge of the pear to kind of enhance the lighter section. I changed the tree to a brown, a darker brown. I basically have changed all the colors. I'm using this lighter linen. This is Legacy Russian Tea Cake, 37 count, and I'm using a Veronica silks. And the leaf is also 2 shades. So I had, these were all the different threads that I was considering. So I think I've narrowed it down to the ones that I'm going to use. And I'm just, I'm having so much fun with it. I really, really am. And as it comes to life, I put in a few stitches, and without this fabric, it's not quite as, it doesn't make my heart race. But then when I hold it up next to fabric, I'm like, yes, that's the look I'm after. And I'm going to try something really unique for the finishing, so so hopefully I can pull it off, because if I do, I think it's going to be something I really treasure. Anyway, I'm having so much fun. I want to add, I feel like it needs pink. It needs some of the pinks that are showcased in the fabric. I think I'm going to, I think I'm going to switch the hearts out though, and I think I'm going to make those little tiny, I don't know if you can see the little tiny kind of like seed, sorry for the glare. I think I might make those little pink like blossoms that have fallen off the pear tree. I don't know. I've been thinking about a lot of things, well, a lot of ways to add in a little bit of that pink. And when I was at the attic in January, and I see a lot of people talking about this book and unique stitches, I think it's exciting. Everybody's getting brave to try things, including me. When I was at the attic for Sampler Symposium in January, I bought this because I thought every time I do a chart, I want to add a few specialty stitches, even if they're not part of the chart. And so I want to add, I think the little pink, little 4 squares are going to be a specialty stitch. And I don't know, let me know if you think that's a good idea. I think that'll just have a delicate bit of color around the edges and maybe not overwhelm it with it. But anyway, so I haven't used all the threads that are here. And the green leaves are not, they're very close, very low contrast. But when you're looking at it, I don't know how it's showing up on camera, but when you're looking at it in real life, it just adds a little depth. I'm having a blast. I am having a blast. And so, yeah, stick with me. I hope I can get this done, the stitching part, and at least, I don't know if I can get the finishing done, but maybe by the next time we see each other, because if I can pull it off. Anyway, so I did work on that. That was comforting and just something I could pick up and easily do. I did also work on my hexagons, but I think I'm going to show you some of the cross-stitch pieces that I'm considering starting on the 4th of July. Of course, you've probably all seen the Tomato Girl. And I just saw this pop up on Instagram and messaged a few other people who I knew were interested in doing this. And I think I need to adapt her. She might have to look like me, very narcissistic person that I am. But I might have to stitch her to look like me and stitch her to be a little pin pillow, just herself or something. I'm not sure yet, but that's something I want to dive into tomorrow and play. And then I thought Laura Duet of Brenda and Laura and the Serial Starter is doing a bowl of ladies from samplers. And I thought, wouldn't it be fun to have a bowl of tomato girls, but inside the tomato have a name of a friend, a bowl of stitching friends. I don't know if I could. I dream about it, but I don't think I'm going to do it because I might never get it done. And then you have to keep adding to it because you're always making new friends, right? Anyway, Tomato Girl. So I'm not sure what color her dress will be, but something that really shows off the red and green. So my trifecta, if you followed me, you know my red, green, and blue. Those are three. That combination just really makes me happy. So that's something that I haven't started yet, but I want to. So this is kind of a whip and hopeful new starts section. And then I purchased Liberty Rose. It's a neat chart that someone did. This is by Samplers and Stitches, is the someone. And she is doing this, of course, in honor of the 4th of July, but also in light of what's coming in 2 years. We will be celebrating 250 years as a nation, the United States of America. And a lot of stitchers and quilters and artists, and everybody is wanting to find a way to commemorate or honor that day in some way, because I know I won't be here for the 300th year celebration. I was here for the centennial. No, I wasn't here for the centennial. I promise you I'm not that old, but I was here for the bicentennial. So anyway, I thought, when I saw this, especially, and I love the way, I think maybe it was, I don't know who it was. Somebody said they were wishing they could exchange these with a friend in England. Anyway, so I saw that and I thought, okay, I have put out several textile interpreter collections now. And I just keep, I keep an example of each one just to have. But the most recent one that I have has this gorgeous floral chintz. Let's see if I can pull it out here. And I think I'm going to stitch that and colorize the rose. I think the rose might actually work with this fabric, but maybe change the blue for the flag so that it's a little bit closer to the blue in this fabric, and use this on the back and make it a pin pillow or pin cushion. So that's kind of inspired me. So this might be a start on the 4th of July as well. We'll see. See if I can pull it off. See if I'm not end up doing a bunch of cooking. So those are a few things that have been running around in my mind to start and to work, that I've been working on in between, like I said, all the wedding happiness. So then I also found great comfort and joy in working on my hexagon project. Now this hexagon project started as a result of the Corliss story, and it has evolved, and I ended up doing more and more flowers, and then I along with Corliss, because she's going to be really the one working on this, put it together, and this is what I've come up with. And if you follow me on Instagram, you may have already seen this. But this is what I have so far. Okay. And I'm really happy with it. I'll see how that looks, and if it's not a good picture, I'll put a picture in so you can see it. And on Instagram, so anyway, it grew. It grew from a few flowers to a joining section to some cornerstone sections to a border, and yes, it grew. And then I think it's going to grow even more. And I asked on Instagram this last week if I was to add a border, and I had two options to choose from. Which one would you recommend? Because I have enough fabric for both. I have a blue border fabric. That is an option. And if you'd like a better view, you can actually look at me on Instagram. I am Standley Susan. So you can see this in a better view. Or the green. Because I have enough to do the green. And it was, you know, I'm going back and forth. They're both, in my opinion, they're both beautiful options. And it was so fun to read everybody's comments. There were people who were absolutist about about the color that they felt it should be the next border. And I think, I want to say most of them were blue. I don't know. It was almost a 50-50 split. So blue, people were very passionate about blue. And then people were also very passionate about green. And then so many people were, it doesn't matter, they're both great. And one lady said, oh, I thought you were going to do like blue, green, and use both of them and go around. And I thought, oh, that's very creative. So as far as like which one won, I don't know. I think, and I honestly do think they both do something different to the fabric in the center. And so, anyway, I'm hoping to get a start on making a decision. I'd like to make a decision on that and get a start on my next stage in this quilt before I see you next. So stick around and see what I do, because I am not totally, either way. I think either way it's going to be great. Now, there are some people who have, because of this, what I'm doing and everything, they've jumped on the bandwagon, and many people have started trying English paper piecing for the first time. And they've purchased, I have tiny little kits on my website, and they've purchased them and they've tried it using the tutorial that I have. And I have to say, Sara of Sara's Stitchy Spot and Veronica of Veronica's Reflections are the two people who posted their finishes of their flowers this week. And so far, the people I've heard from are having a lot of fun. It's a new skill, it's a new technique, it's a new muscle memory with your fingers and your hands and of holding the fabric. But I think everyone knows how to thread a needle, and it's a new adventure. So come join me if you'd like. And of course, as we get into the story of Corliss, we're gonna find out more about English paper piecing and work through that. And stick around and see what I do next on the border. And so then, in light of that, the last year I did a story with a little girl named Mary, and her story was based in St. Louis, and it was in 1840. And we talked about Mary and what she would have been learning as a young child. She was 5 and she was learning to do patchwork. And the items that might have been in a workbox for somebody in the 1840s are very different than the items, well, there are many differences between the 1840 workbox and the 1870 workbox, because our girl this year is from 1870. And we'll talk more about the 1870 workbox, but I thought, I think I need to create a visual for myself, and it's just kind of a memory for me as well, because this is just, it's just been fun. And so I have this beautiful LaHaye shaker box. And if you were with me last year, you'll remember that Mary was stitching, and she had also done some other stitching. And so if you bought the kit for Mary to learn patchwork, the way it would have likely have been done in 1840 using proximate materials, many of the items in this workbox are from that kit. And so the items in the workbox would include pins that would be wrapped in paper. And so pins were precious, they were very hard to find, they were expensive, and they were saved, treasured on paper strips and sold this way and kept this way. So the workbox would have had pins, and then of course a pin cushion, but you would have had your threads, and your threads would have been wrapped in paper, thread papers, and you would pull the thread out. These would have been wrapped and readied in the papers off of a hank, And if you missed all that and want to go back, it is in earlier episodes where I talk about Mary 1840, and I think the episode where I talk about the thread papers is pretty specifically defined. I just found this, when I discovered this and learned all about this, I was super fascinated. She would have had a tin template, which came in your kit, and a paper template for folding the paper over and creating your stitching line. She would have had some buttons for repair and other items, and I will be adding to this workbox, of course. She would have had a Bristol paper ruler that would be what she used to draw straight guidelines and quilting lines and cutting lines. Rulers and measurement was not standardized yet, and there was you couldn't go to the store and buy a rotary cutter and a mat and a ruler. That just wasn't going to happen in your world. She would have had a marking sampler that she kept in her work basket for marking linens and household items and anything else that she needed to stitch. And of course I have a waxer and a pencil. So stick with me, and maybe you'd like to do this too. I was really inspired by some people who did the Mary Project, who did create their own 1840s workbox. And I kind of loosely had all my items, and I thought, I need to put them in one place. So here's my 1840s workbox in progress, and we'll just keep adding to it and watching it grow. And then, of course, we'll create one for this year for Corliss 1870. And so finally, the next thing I haven't started yet, I haven't really even contemplated or thought about it, because what is wrong with me? I never asked my son and his new wife if they would like a wedding quilt or a quilt to commemorate their marriage, and perhaps a sampler. Now that's going to be a lot, but I can start it now and they will enjoy it whenever it's done. So I now have this in my mind, and they're not here at the moment for me to ask, but when they return, I am going to definitely find out from them if they would like a wedding quilt, because traditionally a quilter would always make a wedding quilt for a family member who's married, and this tradition dates way back hundreds of years. So I've been very remiss, and I haven't followed through on that. And I'm curious to see what they like. They have different tastes than me. Maybe they don't want a quilt. I don't know. They probably come over here and see all these quilts, and they're probably going to think, what in the world do you think? Why would we need another one when you have so many? But we'll just see what they want. And so that may be on my to-do start list at some point as we keep going. All right, now let's take a look at haul, some of the new things I've purchased. So in spite of everything that was going on, I did have a little bit of time to do some shopping. And one of the first things I purchased was this book from the Museum of Early Southern Decorative Arts at Old Salem called Layered Legacies. It's the North Carolina Museum of Art has put this out. And it's early quilts from that area, and I wanted to share this one with you because it is all hexagons, and it's dated from 1840 to 1860, so it's a little bit before our girl Corliss. Sorry, this shiny paper is really hard. There we go. Maybe that's not so glaring. It has beautiful examples of quilts done, and this is purely a quilt book. However, some of the early quilts were embroidered, and there were other techniques used that we'll talk about, but at some point. So anyway, it's lovely history of that area, that region, and the textiles that were available. This is a beautiful piece of chintz quilting that has, the chintz has been cut, or scraps have been used to create this quilt. I have to add everything like that to my collection because I find it all very interesting, and I love learning about regional aspects to textiles and why things were used in certain areas. So if that's interesting to you, you may be interested in this quilt. There's some more hexagons, lots of hexagons in this book. And these are all antiques from the museum, and there is a lot of inking for the labels. You can see that. For Mary's quilt, we cross-stitched the label because they were still doing a lot of cross-stitch and embroidery on quilts and labels. I love the way, it's everyone wants to leave their mark, and so everybody finds their own way of doing that through their projects and through the work of their hands. And the Curious Crafters, I believe it's Carolyn, has come up with her own maker's mark, which is a mark that would have been used on sterling silver usually, and probably other metal items. Painters also have their own mark, their own way of identifying their work. And she tucked that into her last finish, and I thought that was so effective and really, really neat. Katie has her way of leaving, her mark, because you know your item is going to outlive you. You hope it does, and you'd like a little bit of yourself left behind, in that people could maybe find a little bit more about you after you're gone. I guess that's for family heirloom purposes. It's nice to leave a little bit of yourself on the piece. And if you're reproducing something or recreating something that that was an antique and doing it in your own way, it is kind of nice to say, I did this, and the original maker was, Sara or whomever. Okay, hope that makes sense. Anyway, okay, another thing I purchased was this book from a group that I'm a member of, the American Quilt Study Group, and it's a great, very, very studious, it's just a group that is full of scholarly people who look at quilts and pick apart the fabrics and pick apart the history, and you have to want to study at that level to really enjoy. I mean, you can enjoy the group no matter what. But what they do is they'll take a theme or either a color or a quilt pattern or design, and they'll make a challenge, and they'll say, create this in your way, and then they'll take it, and several that they, I guess, audition, and then the best of the best are picked for a publication. So this year was a 19th century study of blues, and blues range from indigo to Prussian blue to like lighter blues and lighter homespuns, and so it was just really neat to look at. This is the antique, that was the inspiration, this is the quilt that the maker made. And so this one was done in indigo, but later on in the book there are indigo brown combinations where this was the antique, and then this was what the person did. I love it. There's several in here that I would love to make. There's several I looked at and went, okay, I probably would have interpreted that in this way. And it's just good, I don't know, it's good inspiration and creative, it's good for your creative juices to get flowing. So if you find that interesting, I hope you'll take a look at this book. It's available through the American Quilt Study Group, and I'll link that below. And then there were a few cross-stitch charts that just spoke to me this last month, and I decided I need to get them. I was really enamored with this. Many of you probably already have this. United We Stand. It's a mattress finish pin disc, or pin pillow, excuse me. And I just thought it looked a lot like, it just looked delicate and airy. And I don't really have a lot of patriotic stitches. I typically stitch big pieces that take forever. And so I thought I need to get a few other smalls that I can finish relatively quickly. And anyway, and then this beautiful scissor holder is also a part of it. And there's a needle book. But really, I was drawn to this, and because in 2026, wow, I haven't done a video for a while. I can really tell. I feel rusty. In 2026, it's the 250th anniversary of America. So I'm kind of thinking, you know, long term, and maybe there are a few things I would like to stitch quilt wise and cross stitch wise that are kind of my commemorative pieces for that celebration. So I don't know if you have this book. I think it's probably a reprint, but it's very good. It's a Blackbird. It's, you know, and it's not a reproduction. It's an original. So that's good for me because, you know. And then I saw this come up on the Wishing Thorn, and it came up a while back. Oh, I'm going to take it out. I'm sorry. It's Ellis Holiday 1809 sampler. And I just thought this, I might start a Christmas in July stitch. And I just thought this part at the bottom with Mary and Joseph and the donkey might be really neat to pull out and do as a standalone. I don't know how I would finish it, but anyway, I liked it. I've seen that same motif on some a GGR piece. I can't remember the name of it. Maybe you know. Anyway, I just thought that was neat and different and unique. And so I bought that from the Wishing Thorn, and I did get a hard copy. She mailed it to me. It's always packaged so nicely. And sorry I missed the retreat that she was at. There's so many retreats and super exciting, fun things going on, and I feel like I've been in a little bit of a time warp. But so that's it for me for haul, and not much, but you know, I'm getting back into the saddle here and getting back into life, coming out of my wedding bubble. So now I'm going to give you the update on Corliss. And in Corliss, like, if you don't remember, if you haven't followed me and you don't know me and your first time here, Corliss is my fictional girl for this year, 1870, and she is our springboard to learn about what stitching was like, what was going on in stitching, what was life like, and during that time period, and specifically in Louisville, Kentucky. And so Corliss, through a series of reasons, has now landed herself in Louisville, Kentucky with her aunt Edith, and she is learning all about what it's like to grow up during that time and all that's required of her in the stitching realm. And she left behind a stepsister in Boyette named Farabee, and we're going to learn more about Farabee later on this year. But Farabee so far has been stitching her first marking sampler. So I'm going to read to you a little update on Corliss, and I hope you're stitching and you enjoy listening, and just think about what you've learned so far and how it may apply to what's happening with Corliss. So in the last episode, Corliss attended her first sewing circle with Aunt Edith, and it was the first time she'd experienced that. And you can also go back to the episodes prior to this that I have started adding chapters to, and just go to that section where it says, you know, Corliss Story, and listen to that if you've missed out the prior episodes. So I discuss, you can get the story from the beginning that way. So now Corliss is now getting ready to attend her second sewing circle, but this is with a different group. And many of the same stitchers will be there. But the purpose of this group is to create items for charity, along with providing another social gathering for the people in the town. This group is the Ladies' Aid Society, and the items made here are given away to the poor. or they're sold at sanitary fairs to raise money to support hospitals and assist veterans from the Civil War. In spite of the group being specifically designed for creating clothing and quilt items for people in need, Corliss asks Aunt Edith if she can bring her completed hexagon flowers to share. When she enters the meeting house, Corliss is greeted by many of the same ladies she met at Aunt Edith's church sewing circle. Sara Jane, her new friend, is there, and Corliss is delighted to see her. They haven't seen each other since the first sewing circle. And this, I'm sorry, I forgot to say, this is May 1870. There's no tea served at this event, and everyone is busy at work. Each person at the meeting has brought food to share, and some of the ladies and older girls are in the kitchen preparing a light supper meal. Other family members will join the ladies later in the day, and they will all eat together and share news from other communities. Several of the ladies share the personal projects they've been working on at home. Corliss shares her completed hexagon flowers. She passes them around the room, and she hears several comments. A lady with her hair tied in a tight coil on top of her head exclaims, "Well, my, that's the fabric I gave Corliss from my dear Elizabeth's first school dress." Another lady in a green dress, who looks far too fancy for an event such as this, compliments Corliss on her tiny, neat stitches and praises her for the improvement she's made with her practice. Maybe she understands how meaningful encouragement is to a new stitcher. Corliss and Sara Jane are excited to begin. They start sharing ideas for the fancy work bag and sewing set they will create together using Aunt Edith's wrapper scraps. They work on 4 patches to make a quilt for a veteran and his family. They choose fabric scraps from a large bag donated to the society. Each girl carefully folds the fabric over a paper template to create a sewing line. Remember, this is the same process Mary in 1840 of St. Louis used. Many of the fabrics are just large enough to make a 2-inch square. Sometimes 2 pieces need to be stitched together first to create that 2-inch square. Corliss and Sara Jane laugh as they stitch and consult each other when combining colors. Others in the room are also stitching 4 patches. Corliss thinks about the family who will eventually use this quilt and hopes it will bring them comfort. Late in the afternoon, the older girls begin getting the room ready for supper. The light in the room begins to fade and the lanterns are lit as the family members arrive to share the meal. Stories are exchanged, and there's laughter and noise and music as the few of the men begin playing their fiddles. The sun is setting as Corliss and Aunt Edith begin to walk home, and Corliss feels happy in spite of missing her father. She thinks life with Aunt Edith might not be too bad. I'm really excited to share these chapters with you and share with you a little bit about Corliss's life. I would love to hear what you think should happen in the next episode or in future episodes of Corliss's story. And this is just a fun way of connecting stitching to a fictional yet almost real life character as we explore what she's been doing. So thank you for putting up with this, and I hope you're enjoying it along with me. I do want to share a few pictures at the close of my son's wedding. It was a beautiful day. It was perfect weather. It was supposed to rain, so the outdoor setting had all been moved indoors. That day, it looked like there was no rain in the forecast after all, and everything could be moved outside. It was very windy, and I had my hair up over on top of my head. I mean, it was crazy windy, but it was gorgeous. Beautiful blue sky, billowy white clouds. They were so happy. Your smile almost broke because you're just so happy and smiling, and then there's a lot of emotion, and it's just a huge thing. It's a huge rite of passage, and as a mom, it's like your last. Well, maybe not. I guess there's more to come, but it's a huge milestone, and I'm really proud of both of them. They're wonderful young people. They want to make the world a better place, that was in their vows, and I'm sorry. And so I'm super glad to be a part of their lives and see what they have in store next. So in closing, in closing, I will share some pictures at the end, and I did share them on Instagram, but it's kind of the same things. But thank you for letting me share that with you. And next time I hope to have more progress on my pear tree. I can't promise I'm going to have the complete, fully finished piece, but I certainly hope to have the stitching done. I'm trying to piece together in my mind this. I've never done what I'm attempting to do next time, so it'll be interesting. But I'll have more to share on Corliss, and there'll be more progress on her project. And maybe, just maybe, I will have some ideas for this wedding. These poor kids never got a wedding quilt. So maybe I'll have some, something to show you along those lines. So thank you again for joining me. And until we see each other again, make time for stitching. And happy 4th of July.